to the Fantasy Footballers Podcast, coming to you from the FantasyJocks.com studios with your hosts, Andy Holloway, Jason Moore, and Mike Wright.
Good morning, America!
Yes, it is!
The takeover is happening.
Oh, it's so great.
This is Mike and Jason here. The Fantasy Footballers. Andy, our fearless leader, is out on a well-deserved family vacation.
It only took us 282 episodes.
We finally got rid of him.
Get that guy out of here.
So the boss man is not here to keep us in check. We will do our best.
I will do my best to stay out of check. I forewarn everyone listening that this show will be crazy and
certainly could be,
and completely fall off the rails.
So I will take over the hosting duties today. Andy will be back on Wednesday. Today it is Monday, October 10th. As always, we'll be running through what happened over the weekend. Get you your stud muffins, your pooped in his big boy pants. Of course, our Raisin Cane's Rising Stars of the Week. I want to remind everyone to check out thefantasyfootballers.com, where we have all kinds of articles going up. We have the burning questions for Week 6, because it is Week 6.
That's nuts.
I hope everyone's fantasy team is doing well. Before we jump into the quick question, just want to remind you, you can find us on Twitter at the FF Ballers. You can find Jason at JasonFFL. Find myself at FF Hitman. And if you want to find the Invisible Man, at Andy Holloway. He's also on the Twitter, thefantasyfootballers.com. And just a big thank you to all of our patrons over at jointhefoot.com. Getting you all kinds of extra goodness every single week, extra fantasy footballers goodness. So let's get into it. Oh, I have a note here to review. Andy's almost upset of the week.
Oh, that's a good point, because he nailed it again. He's just been on fire with that.
He had. Well, he failed again because the Eagles and the Lions.
I am still firmly on his side here, that when he calls his almost upset and it's close, if they actually win,
a win's a win, though.
I agree.
But the Eagles were favored by 3 points, so the Lions had to cover by 3. They covered the 3, and then they won by a point.
Yeah, I'm going to take that. I got Andy's back here on that one.
All right, quick question of the day. Which 4 running backs scored more fantasy points than all of the wideouts on their team combined? We're talking half-point PPR.
So we're looking for the combination of good running games with bad passing cores. Denver strikes me that way. It's got to be the Atlanta-Denver game, because Julio, their number one great receiver, did nothing. Julio Jones. So I'm gonna say Freeman and Tevin Coleman.
Okay.
They got to be in there.
So 2 more.
I know for sure David Johnson did, if we're including Thursday, because I believe Larry Fitzgerald had like 98% of the wide receivers, and David Johnson outscored him.
I'll give you a hint. You have 3 of the 4 correct so far. We had David Johnson 32 points to 24.7, Tevin Coleman 24.3, and Devontae Freeman 19.8, and all the Falcons wide receivers combined score 7.7.
Wow.
So there's one last one big running back from the week.
I will take that compliment, but that was not a hint, Mike. I'm looking for a hint now.
Oh, okay. I'll give you the hint. This team is known for running, and because their primary wide receiver did not play this week.
All right. Okay, Ezekiel Elliott.
That is correct.
Nailed it.
Elliott had a monster day, 30.6 points compared to 27. So, I mean, Elliott, man, that was a spectacular game. He had that 60-yard or so touchdown. But let's move it on. We're going to get right into the news.
News and notes from around the league.
We survived this weekend with very little bloodshed as far as fantasy football purposes are concerned. Of course, unless you're Cleveland.
Oh, man.
Cleveland has a serious quarterback problem as Cody Kessler went out. So they turned to Terrell Pryor, of course, for a couple snaps, but also perennial backup, the best backup to ever play.
Oh, man.
Charlie Whitehurst.
Charlie Whitehurst getting it done.
He's still in the league.
For another team. He'll play forever. I believe the X-rays did come back negative on Cody Kessler, which I guess you'd say is good news. I mean, Terrell Pryor was all right in this game, and I think it is good news that Cody Kessler's there. He's better than Whitehurst. At least there's a little bit of hope for the future. The nice thing is coming into this week, I'll bet you Whitehurst ends up getting some more first-team reps in practice so that in either case they're a little bit more prepared. I can't imagine that Whitehurst was fully ready to be the starter there.
Steve Smith Sr. left Sunday's game in the first quarter with an ankle injury. He was already just dominating. He was on pace to have a huge game. Unfortunately, went down with the ankle injury. I have seen the Twitter doctors, Gene Bramall and company have said it doesn't look like it's a terrible sprain. The mechanism of the injury was not a very violent one, so we're talking hopefully a low ankle sprain, and we might even have Steve Smith back this week.
That'd be great. I wonder what changes. Obviously, other news with the Ravens are that their offensive coordinator, Marc Trestman, is no longer their offensive coordinator.
He's been relieved of duties.
Yes, he is out. Look, I love Trestman for fantasy purposes for a passing game, but it was always a curious hire because this is a team that with Harbaugh has always wanted to run the ball. And you saw this last game. That must have been so frustrating to have Terrance West on fire.
Just crushing people.
He looked
destroying souls.
Great. And they're just constantly throwing the ball. Just pass after pass after pass after pass.
And it's the wind is out of control in that stadium. When we knew going
crosswinds going crazy.
You were talking when the game started, 20-mile-an-hour winds. Then you have to deal with crosswind gusts.
Hey, breaking news here. No, you don't need a button.
Oh.
But you're so excited. It's like, I get to do the breaking news buttons. Hopefully there will be a real one later. But starting this week on the fantasyfootballers.com, we are going to have a weekly weather report coming out near the weekend so that you can check in on those things. A lot of our rankings are changed late in the week. We don't know early in the week that it's going to be crazy crosswinds. The meteorologists are just not that good. So
calling the weather is tough, man. You got to give these people a break.
I feel like that's more difficult than calling fantasy football.
Yeah, probably.
So, but yeah, the news there, Steve Smith, hopefully he'll be back. Trestman, I don't think Trestman leaving hurts Steve Smith that much because he's been a part of that team before Trestman was there. But this is great news, I think, for Terrance West, who has looked good from camp, from preseason. He is the starter now, and they want to run the ball so much so that they got rid of their pass-happy offensive coordinator.
Yeah, and, of course, Justin Forsett also relieved of duties. Who's next?
Kenneth Dixon.
No, Kenneth Dixon will not be relieved of duties.
No. Oh, who's next to be relieved?
Yeah, and there was quite the cold bucket of water thrown on Kenneth Dixon for this week. Not super effective combined with Terrance West looking dominant again. So moving on, Jeremy Hill apparently worked through practice this week with a chest injury. This was news that I was not privy to. Somehow I had missed this, which really stinks. I expected big things from Jeremy Hill this week. He re-injured himself in the game in the third quarter. He left. Gio Bernard started the game. The Bengals went down quickly. Gio Bernard was the main guy. So we could, and if Jeremy Hill's going to miss any kind of time, we were on full on Giovani Bernard alert. He's going to become a instant plug and play running back, in my opinion.
Absolutely, they're a good running team. The issue's always been who's it going to be, who's going to be the one producing. If there's only one guy there, they're a great play. So we'll have to monitor that. And if you played Jeremy Hill, just know this: you are not alone.
No,
you are not alone.
No.
And if you got crushed this week in fantasy football, just know this.
Oh, my goodness.
You are not
That should have been the lead.
Alone. Look, I feel like I've got a good team.
You have a very good team.
I believe I'm leading the division right now in our league
one of the
record.
top scoring teams.
And it was the only 3-1 team taking on the only other 3-1 team. And I don't think I've ever been spanked like this in fantasy football in my life. This is a league where, if you have a good game, you score about 100 points. I got outscored by about 115 points. Jeremy Hill, he was a part of that.
what made your matchup so great was the absolute extreme split of the team you were playing against. I mean, starts the week with David Johnson, and this guy, so shout out to Nick, his team just explodes, and your team completely implodes.
Yeah, well, it was like a siphon. I think what he did was he was like,
it's like Shang Tsung.
He took
stole
a siphon
all your
spell.
points.
Yeah, and he's like, give all your points belong to me.
Like, I've never seen a team score so low.
Yeah, and just imagine if I had Eli Manning and Odell Beckham. If that last touchdown didn't go through, I think I was at like 30 points.
So,
whole team.
Speaking of that game, Eddie Lacy, who looked like just an unstoppable Mack truck, who, yeah, he's slow. Who cares? The guy's getting it done. You cannot tackle Eddie Lacy.
Hard to tackle a Mack truck.
I've tried.
Yeah,
I don't recommend it.
You can go to jail for that.
His spin move was on point. He looked just tremendous, but he left the game with an ankle injury. They showed him on the side. It was all wrapped up, and you could see on his face that he was highly disappointed.
Yeah, he tried to get back in the game. They wrapped it up, and he went back in the game, and then he left again. And so it's a little bit more concerning that way. We'll have to monitor this. James Starks might be a good waiver wire pickup because there are not a lot of great running back waiver wire pickups this week. Usually every week a couple running backs go down. Really, Eddie Lacy is the biggest name who might be questionable for this next week. So we'll continue to monitor that.
Speaking of questionable, Carson Palmer still in the concussion protocol as of Monday. So follow his reports. It would appear that he's going to be ready to play, but of course with concussions you're never quite sure. And Ian Rappaport is reporting that Trevor Siemian is expected to play on Thursday night against the Chargers. He got a little bit of nice job security there as Paxton Lynch did not have a strong game against a very beatable Atlanta secondary. Or at least all other teams are easily beating them.
Right. Paxton Lynch, you know what he reminded me of?
The Tampa Bay Buccaneer mascot?
Yes, he needed to be drafted by
Jack
Tampa
Sparrow.
Bay. But as far as his play,
this is the tale.
He reminded me of what rookie quarterbacks are supposed to look like when thrust into action.
Right.
We've gotten spoiled here by Dak Prescott and Carson Wentz. Good job, Lynch, being a rookie.
All right, let's move into some fantasy stud muffins.
This week's Fantasy Stud Muffins.
Well, we got to start at the very top, the tippy top, the Mount Everest. Everyone saw this coming.
Yeah, everybody ranked him high. Actually, this is how far you didn't see it coming, right? I come into the studio today. We're preparing for all of this. We watch basically every minute of every game. We try to catch as much as we can, so we know what's going on. But I look at the top list here of quarterbacks.
Highest scoring player of the week.
Of everybody. The highest scoring player of the week. I watched this week. I'm a fantasy football analyst. I knew what happened. And if you gave me 15 guesses, I probably would not have got it because I would have forgot because I don't care. It's Marcus Mariota. Marcus Mariota, who threw for 163 total yards, was the #1 fantasy football player this week. And let me just go on a little tangent here of look, if this week was hard on you, it was hard on plenty of people because guys like Marcus Mariota and listen to some of the wide receivers that, you had Adam Thielen and Cameron Meredith. Shout out to Andy for calling that one. And Jeremy Curley and so many guys.
The waiver wire was a strong play this week.
Yeah, if you played guys that are not rostered, you did well.
Matt Harmon had tweeted out a very funny line graph of Marcus Mariota's points and weekly finish of QB 15, 18, 30, 30, quarterback 1.
Well, there you have it.
Come on. All right, number 2, the return that everyone was hoping for and expecting. Thomas Brady, touchdown Tommy, was 28 for 40 with 406 yards, 3 touchdowns. He's back.
Yeah, he's pretty good. Going forward now, they're not always going to play the Browns. That was a great welcome back game, but he clearly does not have rust. So anybody that questioned that, your questions were most certainly answered. Going forward, where do you see him, Mike, is he the #1 quarterback to have?
I'll still have him as top 3. I mean, he would be If you're saying the top quarterback to have, yes, because Brady, I feel, is a very consistent force where you can count on him weekly for around 302, which is a fantastic baseline to have, and you know that he can explode at any moment. As far as finishing, I would say I would just refer to him as a top 3 quarterback for now. But, I mean, that's still a guy you want to have on your team. Big Ben continues to scorch at home for 34 completions, 380 yards, and 4 touchdowns. So if we talked about this, if Big Ben is at home, you play him with full confidence. If he's on the road, depends on the matchup. You have to at least consider having a different option. As crazy as that sounds for a guy who has, 9 touchdowns in the last 2 weeks?
Right, yeah, well, and 9 touchdowns in the last 2 weeks. At home, he has thrown for a minimum of 3 touchdowns. He's thrown 3, 4, and 5 touchdowns per game at home. This week he goes to Miami.
That's beatable though.
Yeah, I feel like you stay in the flames on the road with Ben Roethlisberger there.
Phillip Rivers had a big game, 4 touchdowns. Brian Hoyer continues his dominance, continues his surge to be the Chicago Bears starting quarterback, threw for almost 400 yards and 2 touchdowns. He did fail pretty epically there in the comeback attempts where he tried to force feed it to Meredith. When you saw Alshon Jeffrey was building a house, he grabbed a Sunday paper, he grabbed a McGriddle, and then was still open after that.
4th and 8, last play of the game. Obviously, you got to pick it up, and really the game script here is you had like a minute to march down the whole field. You were on like the Colts 28 or something like that. And Alshon Jeffrey is alone, one-on-one coverage on the left side of the field, and he pretty much runs like a 9 route. And he blows past his guy and is wide open with a picnic in the just he threw out the blanket in the end zone. And Meredith is over near the center of the field where also all of the defenders were. Hoyer
didn't bother covering Jeffrey.
Misses him. What's important to know is that the last 3 weeks when Brian Hoyer has been playing and a part of that team, Alshon Jeffrey has finished at best as the 3rd in targets on the Bears. He is. This week he was the
free Alshon. Come on.
This week he was the 4th highest targeted person. The last 2 weeks prior to this week, he was the 3rd highest targeted player for the Bears. That is not acceptable. And what's crazy,
Kevin White is out.
And what's crazy is that he still actually produced relevant numbers with those few of targets. Because his average depth of target. But the point is, Hoyer is not an air it out down the field guy. He's looking to be a little bit safer, even though he's putting up a lot of yards. He's doing it in smaller chunk plays. So Alshon owners must be worried or must be wanting Jay Cutler back.
Sure. Derek Carr in the Phillip Rivers game. He also had a very solid outing. It looked like he should have had at least 6 touchdowns, but things just kept getting called back.
Amari Cooper.
For one way or the other, yeah. I mean, Amari Cooper he's in the Studmuffins as well, but
Amari Cooper should have had 4 touchdowns.
Yes.
In that game. He dropped some. He went out of bounds and came back in on some.
He was a toe out for two catches. Then you had that weird sequence of event of the pass interference. He didn't reestablish himself back, so the touchdown didn't count.
But he was still a great play. Had an awesome game.
Andy Dalton snuck in. I did not move the garbage man drop over onto the soundboard. Otherwise, I would play it right now because Andy Dalton was not good.
That was the quintessential garbage. That was the most meaningless anything could be. You could have pulled Andy Dalton at that point and put in a backup. So shout out to Andy Dalton and my man, Brandon LaFell, who was the recipient of all that worthless garbage.
Well, if it's garbage time, you got to go to the garbage can.
There you go.
So Brandon LaFell had a big game. Andrew Luck and Matt Stafford also had huge games. Let's move over to the wide receivers. I hope you were on the Sunday morning Periscope. Sorry to get a little toot-tooty, but
you need to here. He's the number 1 wide receiver.
I pushed Sammie Coates very hard, especially on the Periscope. He comes through with a 75-yard touchdown immediately in the game.
And he continued.
Yeah, he continued. Ends up with a stat line of 6 for 139 and 2, 11 targets. And unfortunately, you have 3 to 5 drops depending on who was ranking the drops. but including one just horrifying touchdown drop. But it was still a monster game for Sammie Coates.
Yeah, Sammie Coates was great. The guy that I want to talk about as a stud muffin, look, we're going to talk about our Raising Cane's rising stars, the guys really coming up. He was in consideration here. The problem that I felt like he couldn't be my rising stars, he was already so high for me, but he backed it up, and that's T.Y. Hilton.
Sure. T.Y.
Hilton to me is a top 5, top 7 type of wide receiver rest of season. I think he has really taken advantage of Donte Moncrief being out. When Donte Moncrief comes back, I don't think that's going to hurt what we've seen from T.Y. Hilton. I think it's only going to help the offense. Andrew Luck will have another place to go immediately before he gets hit. He loves getting sacked.
It's not his offense. Did you see the story? I don't remember the source, unfortunately, but they were talking about the reason the defense is so bad is because they had to give Andrew Luck that big contract. So once again, it sounds like management is hiding. Like, yeah. we had to pay Andrew Luck so much money, so we couldn't assemble a good team.
That's ridiculous.
People are assembling good defenses with high-paid quarterbacks.
It's possible.
Look at
get a general manager.
Look at the Ravens. Joe Flacco, monster contract. Their defense is pretty good. So I mean, this ridiculous stories just keep coming out of Indianapolis. Amari Cooper, the aforementioned, 6 for 138 with a touchdown, should have had probably 4. Larry Fitzgerald,
Pro Bowl Larry,
gets it done, 6 for 81 with 2 touchdowns. Drew Stanton is horrifying. Drew Stanton is.
I will say this: if Drew Stanton is not back for the Monday night game, I'm still. I know that
if
every target.
If Palmer's not back.
Yes, I'm sorry. If Palmer's not back for the Monday night game and Stanton is the quarterback, I realize Stanton targeted Larry pretty much exclusively.
It was 99.9%.
Right. But I'm still afraid to play Larry Fitzgerald with Drew Stanton. Drew Stanton was horrifically bad in that game against a pretty easy Niners defense. So you really are rooting for Carson Palmer to get back, which I expect he will be he's got extra time going to Monday night.
I will say for me, the last time I was afraid of playing Larry Fitzgerald last year, and I benched him, was in that Seattle game where they went up to Seattle, and then Larry Fitzgerald had a monster game.
Yeah, I think the advice is you start him, but you are afraid.
Yeah.
You just know, lower expectations.
If you're scared, you go to church, and you still start Larry Fitzgerald. Brandon LaFell, the garbage can, comes through with a big game. Let's move over to the surprises. Adam Thielen and Cameron Meredith and Jeremy Curley, all in the Stud Muffin section this week, all going over a hundo with at least one and having a touchdown.
Okay, so who can repeat this?
Sure.
I don't think – well, I want to hear what you say because I have some thoughts on those 3 guys.
Of these 3 guys, if anyone can repeat, it would be Jeremy Curley for me because he's the #1 target for San Francisco. There's the rumblings in the bushes that they're going to make a quarterback switch, so that could throw everything out the door. I assume, though, even if it's Colin Kaepernick or Christian Ponder, who apparently the team is clamoring for, they want Christian Ponder to start. I don't know if they've watched game tape of Christian Ponder, the team.
I think the team really does not like Colin Kaepernick. At least some of them. I mean, I'm sure some are great.
Well, they've been calling for Kaepernick as well. I'm saying the team does not like Blaine Gabbert.
Yeah, there will be a quarterback switch.
Likely. I would say it's
yes.
likely.
It's not a guarantee, but I expect that there will be one. For that reason, I don't believe in Jeremy Curley going forward. If Colin Kaepernick was the quarterback, that upgrades more of a Torrey Smith and downgrades a Curley to me.
It could. Well, the thing about Kaepernick is he's a one-read guy. So if his first read every single time is Jeremy Curley, it's going to be throw the ball to Curley or run.
Yep.
So Curley could still be great.
Adam Thielen, to me, was someone I liked going into this week. I think what we saw.
No Stephon Diggs.
But he requires Stephon Diggs being out. And Andy really liked Cameron Meredith, said he's a spot start if you need somebody with the injuries there, and he was pretty good.
And that was even with – we were on Cameron Meredith watch because Eddie Royal should have been out. We got John Fox again, where Eddie Royal just did not practice the entire week, was considered – I think he was even doubtful. He might have still been questionable. But then he was a surprise active, was out there the whole time. But Cameron Meredith still had a big game. Antonio Brown and Tyrell Williams was the San Diego wide receiver roulette winner this week as he had the big game. Moving over to running backs, David Johnson, Ezekiel Elliott, they're both unstoppable. I want to move over to Tevin Coleman. Only 6 for 31 on the ground, but another big receiving game for Coleman. 4 for 132 and a touchdown. And this was all we had the sickle cell concerns.
Oh, yeah.
So clearly the team.
I did not think he was going to be very involved.
I didn't either.
And
clearly we don't have access to the medical records, so the team obviously went thorough and said, okay, this won't be a destructive problem for Tevin Coleman, which there are players that they can't play in Denver because it's dangerous to their life. But Ryan Weiss, a staff article for the Fantasy Footballers, is pointing out Tevin Coleman has not rushed for more than 50 yards in a single game.
It hasn't even hit 50 this year, and you feel like, wow, he was before this monster week where he was one of the top backs, he was already the 13th best back fantasy-wise. So it's really tough to say, can you start him? You know, this was a difficult matchup, and nobody started Tevin Coleman in this matchup, and yet he was worth starting. This coming week, they go to Seattle. Do you start Tevin Coleman in Seattle? I mean,
I think I do.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, so this will be what do we, let's make a water bet here.
Oh, okay.
I still can't believe it. And so
I don't know what to bet yet because I have no sort of rankings done. This is all just gut of they went into Denver and they looked pretty good.
Okay, here's the truth. Analyst wise, I was going to make top 20, and then I thought to myself, he's probably going to be top 20. So I think that completely changes it. There is no water bet, and I would probably start Tevin Coleman. We'll be doing our research this week in preparation and rewatching film. So pay attention, but maybe Tevin Coleman's just earned a startable spot.
Sure. Before we move on to the rest of the Studmuffin running backs, I want to thank today's sponsor, Pristine Auction, the absolute best, the fabulous sports memorabilia site on the web. Look, you're getting fully authenticated signatures from your favorite athletes, and not even just athletes. I mean, you go in here, they have awesome comic book stuff as well. I've seen tons of collectible Stan Lee signed items. And I'm on here every single day because they have daily auctions. I mean, that's I think what separates a part of the separator for Pristine Auction is they have new stuff going out every single day. Then you have your weekly and your elite auctions. So I mean, there's a point for everyone. There's a price point for everybody to get in because this stuff is far more affordable than you could possibly imagine. If you've never been on Pristine Auction, I promise you. They are the best for you want to deck out your office space, your house. You want that apartment to look a little bit better. Get a signed jersey, put it up on the wall. These things just glisten and they beam. They make everything look better. So head over to Pristine Auction. That's PRISTINE auction.com. Make a completely free account, and when you do, make sure you let them know that the fantasy footballers have sent you.
Yeah, and we also want to give a shout out to the awesome sponsor of SeatGeek. The SeatGeek app is the place that you need to use to get your tickets. You can do it online. You can do the app. Their app is free, and it is amazing. They basically pull in tickets from every ticketing provider. Look, this week, Mike, the Carson Palmer led Arizona Cardinals, they're going to be here on Monday Night Football.
I'm very interested.
I think we got to pull out that SeatGeek app and look for tickets.
I think you're right.
I know I'm right. So that's going to be taken on the Jets, but that's what you need to do, man. If you want to go to a game, that's the way to do it. You get SeatGeek. They pull in hundreds of ticketing sites. They show you the best. Like, you can pick your seats. You look at the map, and you pick your seats, and you pick it based on a color-based grid of value. So you know you're getting a good price. You know you're getting good seats. And they have seats to every kind of sporting event, non-sporting event, and they'll give you $20 back off your first purchase. So here's what you do. You download the free SeatGeek app. Go to the settings tab, click add promo code, and enter the promo code footballers, and then SeatGeek will send you $20 back after you've made your first ticket purchases. So download the free SeatGeek app and enter the code footballers today.
If you grabbed a ticket to go watch the Chicago Bears play, then you got to watch Jordan Howard, running back one, 3-down guy getting over 90% of the snaps every single game since he started. Jason and I were talking about this. If there was a fantasy draft today moving forward, and I said, where would Jordan Howard go? He'd go in the second round. That's how crazy things have changed and how quickly things have changed for me, for the Chicago Bears. Just an absolute monster performance. 16 for 118 yards on the ground.
Yeah,
3 for 45 with a touchdown through the air.
Hint, hint. We'll talk about him a little bit more in a couple of minutes. Other running backs, Theo Riddick got it going again through the air. He was actually decent on the ground, ran at a good clip, but together he put together almost 100 yards, got 2 touchdowns, so he was valuable. We know from last Thursday, Carlos Hyde is looking good. He's being involved in the offense in a way where if you're winning, if you're losing, you're confident and you can start him. And the guy that, to me, like when I watched the tape, if you're out there and you didn't get a chance to watch yourself and you go, I don't know who I can trust, who I can't. Dude, the guy that looked amazing to me was LeSean McCoy.
Whoo-wee.
Every time he touched the ball, it was like he was a slippery fish that guys could not get a hold of.
The slippery fish.
Oh, he was just in and out, and it was like guys couldn't touch him. He passed my eyeball test by a million miles, and for me, I think he's safe. He's on a team that wants to run the ball. If you're down, who are you passing it to? Shady. And the question is he still, does he still have it? You know, he's been a top fantasy back, and yes, he still has it. So you've got the combination. Look, I wish they were a higher scoring offense that, you know, you could rely on for more 30-point games. You're not going to be able to do that. But I will say this, since they have changed their offensive coordinator, the Buffalo Bills look like they're a good team. LeSean McCoy
they just beat the 3-1 Rams.
Yeah, and LeSean McCoy is a guy that, for me, I don't know if you can buy him right now. People that own him might be a little too high on them, or maybe it's not too high.
He's a running back 1.
Yeah.
I mean, he's a 3-down. There's very little 3-down backs who are getting that kind of snap percentage. I mean, you talk about Shady. Jordan Howard is now in that conversation. David Johnson and Zeke, and of course Le'Veon Bell.
Zeke doesn't really get involved in the pass game quite to the extent.
3 for 37.
Yeah, no, well, he was successful, but I mean 3 catches.
Right.
I'm guessing that was his season high.
Maybe.
Bet.
But the where LeSean McCoy is most susceptible is when he breaks off a big run, and then on the 2 and the 1 yard line, he's very tackleable. Unfortunately, for me, it's my fantasy team, and I would watch Mike Gillislee steal my touchdowns, and I would be infuriated. DeMarco Murray just keeps getting it done, and here, this is amazing. DeMarco Murray, he was called washed up, old busted last year because he certainly looked like it. He could not move laterally at all. Had a pretty down year. He's already he forced. This was just this week. He forced 13 missed tackles on his 32 touches.
That's pretty good.
13 missed tackles.
A couple of years ago, DeMarco Murray.
Talk about a slippery fish.
Yeah, DeMarco Murray led many people to fantasy championships when he was a part of the Dallas Cowboys. He has done it before, and while he doesn't have the same offensive line, he's actually more involved in the passing game than he was then. He would be in that conversation of those 3-down, bell cow,
yes,
any game script, any defensive matchup. DeMarco Murray is a
weekly start. Moving over to tight ends, of course, the number 1 tight end of the week, New England. He's back. He looked a little bit banged up at the beginning of the game.
Well, you're talking about Gronk, right?
Of course not. I'm not talking about Rob Gronkowski. I'm talking about Martellus Bennett. 6 for 67, 3 touchdowns. Like I said, he went down at the beginning of the game. I thought he like tore his groin or something, the way he was down. And there's some pretty funny comments you can look up of him talking about that. Find it on the internets. But I'm imagining someone like a fantasy analyst interviewing Martellus Bennett and saying, what do you think about Gronkowski for fantasy purpose? And then just him belly laughing like Jabba the Hutt, like as he steals all the freaking touchdowns for New England.
Hey, Gronk still got it done. He had a pretty good game, 109 yards himself.
3 touchdowns to Bennett.
3 touchdowns. So do you start both guys going forward? Yes. I'll answer that for you.
I'll say the answer is yes, but his first 2 touchdowns, Martellus, were very short, and then he had the 40-yard touchdown. So yardage-wise,
do you sell Bennett if you have him?
If I
got him on your team?
Yes, 100%.
And you can't really buy him right now because he's going to be too expensive. He'll have some up weeks, some down weeks. If he's on waivers, pick him up. If you've got him, keep him. or possibly trade him, but I think he is a weekly start. I mean, if I have him, I'm probably looking to trade my other tight end if I can get value.
You're that confident?
I think he look, most tight ends this year are poopy. I mean, you just don't like a whole lot of tight ends.
That's true.
I mean, sure, if I've got Greg Olsen and Martellus Bennett, then I'm definitely selling Martellus Bennett as high as I can, get something, and I'd rather have Olsen. But, I mean, other than 4 or 5 guys, then I would say Bennett is right there for me. But here's a bigger question, right? Because you got Tom Brady, you've got 2 monster tight ends. Now let's shift over to another team with 2 tight ends who both performed this week.
Right.
And I knew when I found out that Antonio Gates was coming back, I lowered both Gates and Hunter Henry. I didn't really love either. I figured they would cannibalize each other, and they did, but there was enough meat to eat that they both had great games.
It was like the Oregon Trail, and they got a buffalo, and they couldn't even bring it all back.
No, they just they shared a plenty. So you had Hunter Henry, 3 for 74 and a touchdown. Gates, 4 for 30 and a touchdown. Can you start both of these guys going forward with Phillip Rivers?
It's what's tough here is Hunter Henry outsnapped Antonio Gates 43-18. Antonio Gates was still coming back from that injury. I mean, when he was asked, "Are you going to play?" he said, "I'm going to give it a go." Basically, it wasn't, "Oh yeah, I'm ready to. I'm all healed up." It was, "I'm going to try," and he did, and he had a good output. Antonio Gates is chasing down that tight end. Touchdown record.
He wants the touchdown
He wants
record.
that. So, but moving forward, I mean, Hunter Henry. I know the yardage was what looks good, 3 for 74, only 4 targets, and one of them was a huge chunk play. But like you said with Martellus Bennett, just because the tight ends are so bad, the guy just can't stop scoring. So I think that I'm okay throwing it into the air and starting him.
I'm going to go on record right now that they have not convinced me at all. They both got a touchdown. The game script helped them. Like you said, a huge chunk play for Henry. I feel like I don't want to really start either one of these guys right now. I'm going to look for other options. They can win me over, but I think what I watched was not something that is just certainly going to be repeated week after week. It's a part of that San Diego roulette. Does Phillip Rivers have enough touchdowns and volume to go around? Yes, but he has so many different targets that you just can't bank on. I don't like starting the San Diego Chargers because you're getting boom bust.
Sure, that's fair. Delaney Walker. Of course, if Marcus Mariota had a good game, that means Delaney Walker had an excellent game. Dwayne Allen, I think that was the week Jason finally gave up.
I've been high on Dwayne Allen, and he's like, I don't get it. Dwayne Allen's done nothing. And it's like, all right, yeah, you're right. I lower him a little bit in my rankings. He goes for 5 for 50, 6 for 50 and a touchdown. Thanks, Dwayne.
Yep, Gronk had a big game. Jesse James, the outlaw, continues to get these touchdowns. He benefited greatly from a Sammie Coates drop. And a Baltimore Raven tight end had an okay game, except it was Crockett Gillmore.
On that note, you need to know this. The last 2 weeks, even before this week, Crockett Gillmore was running a lot of routes. He was running a lot of passing routes and was involved in that game. Didn't show up on the box score quite the same, but it did this week. And so it says to me that Dennis Pitta is not that super reliable 10-target guy.
He's still getting tons of targets.
Sure, but with Trestman gone and Crockett Gillmore being there, I think that Pitta, you just need to temper those expectations. I don't think he is going to be as valuable without Trestman.
I'm okay tempering. I will say I think there'll be less volume to go around for the Ravens now that Trestman is gone. But I think that Dennis Pitta will be the tight end that gets it. He was 7 for 59 on 8 targets. So 8 targets, 5 targets, 8 targets. I mean, that's
for tight ends.
That's great. So I'm not worried about Dennis Pitta. So a couple honorable mentions. Devontae Adams did not Limburger this week. He had a very strong game. And Randall Cobb. Cobb went over 100.
I like that.
You did, and you liked Randall Cobb coming into this week. I don't believe I did.
I figure coming off of a bye at home, Aaron Rodgers is very good at home. There was enough volume and touchdowns to go around. In fact, he caught a 28-yard great touchdown catch in the game that was called back on a completely meaningless I think it was Devontae Adams who kind of shifted on the line
okay.
during that play. And so it was called back because he moved his hand a little bit. But, I mean, it was a great touchdown. So here's the deal. I was high on Randall Cobb coming into this week. I thought he was going to have a game like he did. This is where I now sell him. Very similar to me to Ryan Matthews. Ryan Matthews, I thought coming into this game was, and how about this? We got to bring up the water bet.
Sure.
This is nonsense, Andy. It is nonsense. So I said that Ryan Matthews is going to be their primary running back. He is
the ball carrier.
He is the ball carrier. He is their primary running back. And Andy said no. He said Wendell Smallwood and Kenya Barner, they're going to be involved. So I made him a water bet. I said he's going to get 15 carries. I lost the water bet.
He fell short.
He got over 15 touches, but he didn't get 15 carries. I lost the water bet, but I won in spirit because Kenya Barner and Wendell Smallwood combined for 0 carries.
Yep.
And it was clearly Ryan Matthews as the man. I believed in him. He did it, and I cannot recommend people enough
to sell him.
Sell Ryan Matthews right now because I still do see what Andy saw with Kenyon Barner and Wendell Smallwood there, the injury history of Ryan Matthews, and the fact that his contract says he's not the future. I think he might have another couple good games. If you can't sell him this week, sell him next week. But I don't believe in Ryan Matthews rest of season. He's a scary guy to own. I would look to try to shore up running backs, try to trade him and someone else for an upgrade at running back.
Rest of season, I would have him as a lower end running back too. I mean, it's going to be game flow dependent. I loved the 5 receptions and the receiving touchdown that went to him. That was great news for Ryan Matthews owners. The 11 carries, if you weren't privy to what happened in the game, they were getting boat raced for most of the first half by Detroit, so they were throwing the ball and they weren't able to establish that running game.
Also, he fumbled the game away at the end.
Yeah, that's
not going to earn him a lot of carries.
That's the big variable. He also had a huge 30-yard run that got called back because an offensive lineman was downfield. So he's still a curious case of I don't know. I would probably sell if I could, but I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know if I would.
The hope here is not that you can sell and you can finally get rid of him on the cheap. The hope is that you can find someone who believes.
Sure.
I know you in our League of Record, you have Ryan Matthews. You said, yeah, I'm gonna shop him. I'm probably gonna shop him. But that doesn't mean you necessarily have to trade him.
Right.
You're just gonna see if his name and if his value to a team that needs a running back, if that can net you enough in return.
So Matt Asiata.
Ooh, Asiata.
Has proven that you can just grab him off the waivers and start him if you're ever in a pinch. He's not going to be reliable though. Is there any? Oh, Todd Gurley, back from the dead. Todd Gurley had a very solid game. He wasn't enough to get in the full-on Studmuffins.
3 for 36 through the air, which is important to see again. Are you getting scared, Mike, on your Todd Gurley catches on the season?
Well, because Cunningham was out.
Yes.
So what's nice, what I can fall back on is that Jeff Fisher is a creature of habit, and as soon as Benny Cunningham is back, I feel like he's just going to say, okay, Benny, you're the third down guy again.
My goodness, man. When they were down on the goal line, I think they were at like the 4-yard line, and it was 4th down. They're down by 7 points. They're down by 7. So a field goal, if you get the field goal, means you need a touchdown. If you get the field goal, you still have to get a touchdown, and it's 4th and 4. The game is almost over, and he kicks a field goal. And then guess what they had to do when it was 4th and forever on their own 18 later in the game? They had to go for it in a terrible situation. How do you not go for the touchdown? I mean, I don't even – you can't convince me of the logic there.
The football book of how to be a winner at football – that was written in 1925. He
needs the updated edition.
That's the one he goes to. Game script, 1925.
Always kick the field goal.
So let's move on. We're going to talk some rising stars.
Raising Cane's Rising Stars of the Week.
Of course, I have to take this moment in the sun. Sammie Coates was a guy I had talked up pretty strongly. I think I used very strong language for Sammie Coates over the offseason, that I loved him in the late rounds as a sleeper. He's been emerging lately, and this week we talked about it, 6 for 139 and 2 with 11 targets. I don't care about the drops. Look, Mike Evans drops the ball. Amari Cooper drops the ball. Guys have drops. But here's what Coates is not dropping. He's latched in. He's the Martavis Bryant role for the Pittsburgh Steelers, which is a very productive fantasy role. We've seen Martavis Bryant, who should have been a wide receiver 1 if he could play an entire season, and now Sammie Coates, that's his job moving forward. So I have him locked and loaded as a weekly flex start at the worst.
On the road as well?
Even on the road, because I know that because the big play is there, at any time, we've seen Martavis Bryant, zeros. You get to the fourth quarter. Oh, here's a 70-yard touchdown bomb, and now you have a wide receiver 2 for the week. So it's just, I love him. If he's on your waiver wire, I would be very aggressive trying to get him.
Yeah, no, I agree. When we talk waiver wires tomorrow, he will probably be one of, if not the top.
He'll be my top wide receiver.
Because I do think that he is a guy that for the rest of the season, he's going to entrench himself in a place where maybe he's not weekly. Maybe he is very similar to Ben Roethlisberger, a home-away start. But when you start him, he's going to have a lot of big performances. And you've seen his targets go up and up. The guy, to me, who's rising up, and I alluded to this earlier, is Jordan Howard, because I still have that fear. Look, they've got the Week 9 bye, and that's where I'm.
His coach is still John Fox.
Yeah, I'm still expecting Langford to come back and to cut into the workload. But what I used to think was going to happen was that it's going to come back and it's going to be a 50-50 split, or even a 55-45 for Langford. You know, the starter to start the season. He comes back. He gets the work, and you saw this last year, right? You had Matt Forte there. He was the starter. Langford took over, and he was helpful to the Bears from injury. And when Forte came back, they split. And Langford was still valuable the rest of the way. Forte was still valuable the rest of the way. And I'm going to say that Jordan Howard is going to be valuable the rest of the season, even after Langford gets back, because what he has shown is that the opportunity helps, right? Maybe he won't be an absolute monster after Langford gets back, but he gets yards after contact. He is a good receiving running back. So if they get down, which I believe the Bears from time to time will get down.
Yep.
And I think Jordan Howard is safe. I would be willing to trade for him. Crazy as it is, there's still 10% of leagues he's on the waivers. I mean, it should be 100%, but
yeah.
Jordan Howard, I believe in him. He's rising up.
I fully believe in Jordan Howard too. I've had this conversation with Andy, who he had that stroke of luck where he picked Jordan Howard up the week Langford got hurt.
Before, yeah.
Yeah, the week before it. And I've engaged in trade conversations, but I don't know what to pay.
Okay, let me ask you this. Rest of season, who would you rather have? It's a draft starting today. And the only 2 running backs on the board are Ryan Matthews and Jordan Howard.
Oh, it's Jordan Howard. It's easily Jordan Howard. But in our league, I mean, trades are different because we can trade draft picks and everything. But I'm with you that he should be a top 10 running back moving forward. But there's that ounce of fear that John Fox is going to screw me. And if I trade everything away, because Howard's price just keeps going up week over week. I didn't strike immediately when I should have. So now I'm paying the price because the law of economics, Jordan Howard is now far more in demand. So, but I have a really tough time offering that price to get him.
Here's what listeners need to know going forward. Jordan Howard, look, he's rising up my Raising Cane's Rising Stars. Really love him. He's delicious. If you're going to trade for him, he's got a juicy matchup this week in Jacksonville. You want to get a hold of that, right? You want a piece of that. The next 2 weeks after that, he goes to, he's got Green Bay, who's
that's tough.
A really tough matchup, followed by Minnesota.
That's worse.
Followed by a bye.
Oh, I see what you're saying there.
So while I do like Jordan Howard rest of season, what I'm saying is that I believe in him weeks 11 through 16.
So if you are a team that's, let's say you're 1-4 and you're trying to kickstart things, buying Jordan Howard because you need wins right now might not be the best idea.
Right, because you might get one and then you're going to struggle.
That's fair.
But if you've got a late if your trade deadline is late, if it's week 10, week 11, I think he's going to be a late season great grab.
So speaking of juicy, Raising Cane's chicken fingers. Those were the Raising Cane's Rising Stars of the Week. Remember that game day tastes better with Raising Cane's tailgates full of fresh 24-hour marinated hand-battered chicken fingers, fresh brewed sweet tea. Visit raisingcanes.com to find your nearest location.
If you haven't been, it's so good.
Yeah, pro tip, if you have not been to Raising Cane's,
Go to Raising Cane's.
Evaluate your life, get it together, and eat some Raising Cane's because it is just the best.
It sure is.
All right, let's move on to some guys who
not so good.
Maybe they let you down.
Pooped in his big boy pants.
When I say maybe let you down, I mean they let you down in a horrific fashion.
Yeah, one of those guys would be Eli Manning. I had him very highly rated. You saw what should have been a high-scoring game.
What was so funny, sorry to interrupt you, was even the commentators, like, both of these secondaries are depleted. And you have two Pro Bowl, Super Bowl winning quarterbacks. Yeah,
they said
and no one can get it done.
It was really bizarre. Something looks off with Eli.
Oh, that offense is a mess.
I don't know what's going to fix it. I don't know, hopefully they get it together for the sake of Odell Beckham alone. But they're not looking good. He didn't play well. 18 of 35 is not good. Didn't get to 200 yards. Only got a garbage time touchdown, and that was it. He was pretty terrible.
Maybe the general that was Tom Coughlin, who I wasn't a big Tom Coughlin fan because I don't like the old-fashioned coaching approach. But maybe that team needs him.
Yeah,
maybe that team needs that.
They
kind
needed
of
a father figure.
Yes,
and now they've got an uncle figure.
Well, right now they have the principal from Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
Seriously, man, that mustache is just unbelievable. But here's what Eli Manning does have.
He's looking in the mirror like, "Yep,
yeah, looking good today.
That's a good idea."
That's why I called him the uncle. Look, here's what Eli Manning can say as saving grace. Is that he was not as bad as Ryan Tannehill.
Oh,
Ryan Tannehill. I don't know that Ryan Tannehill really has big boy pants.
No,
he hasn't looked good for a long time. Only threw the ball 18 times, 191 yards, 0 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. That's not good for your Jarvis Landry's, your Devontae.
Landry with the lowest targets of his career.
Yeah, it was not looking good there.
I think Ryan Tannehill has not longed for the Dolphins.
No.
I know they gave him a contract, but I feel like if I remember correctly, the contract was team friendly that they could get rid of him if they need to.
Tannehill should be gone before Gase. Adam Gase should be allowed to stay and try to rebuild that team.
Moving on to some running backs, we had Isaiah Crowell, who, he's been tearing it up, but this was not the matchup that you really wanted to play Crowell, and I understand that if he's your 2, you had to play him, but against the Patriots, you knew they were going to get blown out. So it was not ideal. Matt Jones, another clunker, but I don't know if I would put big boy pants onto Matt Jones. It stinks that he's a starter.
Here's why Matt Jones had big boy pants, because of the week before. The week before when he blows up, and this is why we say this before. We've said this before, and I'm sure we'll say it again. But you don't chase points when you got that big weekly blow up game. And it's kind of the first. You don't chase those, oh, that was on my bench, now I got to start him. Look at the matchup. If it's good, then continue with it. But if it's not, like this one wasn't, Baltimore's got a pretty good run D. I was disappointed with him. I thought he would certainly do better than this, especially in a game where the heavy crosswinds mean you need to run the ball. Maybe that was part of the problem, though. Defenses could kind of load up a little bit more, less afraid of deep balls. You're not going to throw a deep ball with 20-mile-an-hour crosswinds. That certainly did not help him. Matt Forte is another running back who
has now been, I believe, the last 3 weeks in PPR formats has been outproduced by Bilal Powell.
Yeah, I really like Bilal Powell. The problem is they eat into each other's workload, kind of what we saw to start the season. We were not high on Forte coming in. Really felt like, man, we got that wrong.
Yeah, that looks pretty bad.
Because Forte was on fire. But the gas seems to be running low. He is certainly a continue to monitor. What do you do if you have Forte? You're starting him if you have him, but are you looking to?
I'm not looking to unload him.
Would you look to acquire him?
If I could get him low right now, if an owner has become disenfranchised or disappointed by him by the last couple of weeks, I would, because I still think that Matt Forte is a running back too, and he has weekly upside. I think that it was a tougher matchup for when you're talking about running the ball for the Jets against the Steelers, because you knew that the Steelers were going to score a bunch of points. But moving forward, I think Forte will still be a usable running back.
Yeah, if you need running back help, you might be able to get him cheap enough.
The
guy that I would definitely target who pooped in his big boy pants this week is C.J. Anderson.
C.J. Anderson is very polarizing. I'm glad you wanted to focus on him. So you're talking you want to buy Anderson now.
I'm certainly buying Anderson. He's a guy that I wanted to buy earlier, but he was too expensive. I mean, he looked like he was going to be a top 5 back rest of season after those first 2 weeks. Now he has 3 weeks in a row where he hasn't been that great, right? He had 14 for 37 against Cincinnati, then 19 for only 49, but he got a touchdown, so he saved himself last week against Tampa Bay or the week prior, and now against Atlanta, 11 for 41. But you have to consider with Paxton Lynch in there, they did not worry about the passing game whatsoever. Paxton Lynch couldn't get it done. That game script also got away from them because Atlanta started the game up, and it's very rare at home for the Broncos to start in a hole with that defense. So there's a lot of things that kind of made this okay to me. I mean, he only had 11 carries, which is by far his lowest total of the season, and that was kind of a game script thing. So to me, C.J. Anderson, if people aren't believing that he's a top back, I still believe, top 6 back rest of season. There's not many guys I would rather have.
I love C.J. Anderson. I've professed my undying love for him. But I will play the devil's advocate and read you some numbers that are kind of startling.
Sure.
10.3, 19.7, 23.9, 25, 41.4.
I have no idea what that
Those
means.
are the snap percentages of Devontae Booker.
Oh, sure.
Who is rising in trust, rising in playing time. So I think that I still believe that C.J. Anderson is the primary guy for that team, but clearly Booker is gaining the trust of the coach, and he's going to eat into C.J. Anderson being that 65-70% snap percentage guy.
Yeah, and I agree that Devontae Booker will get more involved. But, I mean, the last 3 weeks you got 4 carries, 7 carries, and 6 carries for Devontae Booker. I think that'll continue. I think he'll get 6 or 7 carries a game. And that's a decent chunk of work. That's a running back that is involved in the running game. But that's not a guy that's not going to scare me off of thinking that C.J. Anderson is the lead back.
Sure.
And if you look at the red zone work, that's C.J. Anderson's.
The volume finally fell out. The bottom dropped. Lamar Miller had 8 carries for 20 yards. This was another one. The matchup is going to be bad, but you can feel safe, and you had that warm blanket of he's going to touch the ball 20 times.
This one hurts.
And then he did not.
Look, Lamar Miller was on my aforementioned we should put in the pooped in his big boy pants section me. Okay, because my goodness.
All these guys are on Jason's team.
Yeah, all of these players belong to me for sure. I had Eli Manning, Lamar Miller, Jeremy Hill. Yeah, I mean DeSean Jackson.
We've not talked about it. So
Kyle Rudolph,
Jerick McKinnon had an unfortunately down game. Matt Asiata was the man for Minnesota, where McKinnon, he looked good last week, still got 20 carries, but 20 carries for 36 yards.
So let's talk about the Houston Texans offense.
Sure.
Because it wasn't just Lamar Miller. It was Lamar Miller. It was DeAndre Hopkins until the absolute late garbage touchdown.
Yes. Oh, the garbage man can. Because I don't have
it was Will Fuller, who did absolutely nothing.
1 for 4.
And Brock Osweiler, who, like a lot of us pundits were kind of saying, was not worth that money and was not a great quarterback, is looking like he cannot handle this role. Now, that was a really tough matchup. You can't blame them in that matchup to necessarily say, well, what are you going to do? Nobody has done anything
against the Vikings.
Yeah, against the Vikings. So do you buy these players, or are you scared because this is several games where they've really stunked it up?
I'm still willing to buy Hopkins. I'm not sure if the DeAndre Hopkins owner is going to be willing to sell. I know that if they followed the game, they would know that Hopkins was terrible until the very end. But I imagine that little boost at the end, they're going to puff their chest back up and be like, oh, no, he's still the top 5 elite wide receiver, which he hasn't been since the first half of last year. But I think that he's a fine wide receiver one moving forward. I would try to acquire him, but
what about Lamar Miller? People have been very disappointed.
I would love to buy Lamar Miller.
Yeah, well, you can't have him.
I know. I know for our league, but I'm saying for the listeners, for the Foot Clan out there, I would try and get Lamar Miller. The tweets are coming in furious right now. People, what do I do with Lamar Miller? And the answer to me is you keep him or you go and you buy him. This was the week where you knew it was going to be really bad. You hoped it wasn't going to be 8 for 20 bad, but the touches are secure for Lamar Miller. No one else in that backfield is going to take his job.
Yeah, the whole offense did absolutely nothing. It wasn't just Lamar Miller let you down. The Texans did, and it was against the Vikings, so there's rationale for it.
Wide receivers, some big-time guns let you down. A.J. Green fell back as the Bengals had just a really off day. Julio Jones, unfortunately, only 2 for 29. I thought that he could still be okay and get you low-level wide receiver one production, but that was not to be. Julian Edelman on 10 targets, only 35 yards because stupid Martellus Bennett. Dang it, man.
Everybody,
that's frustrating.
Everybody that had Edelman.
Congratulations to you, Martellus, but you hurt my feelings. You hurt my feelings, my friend. The aforementioned Jarvis Landry, 3 for 28. That's back-to-back bad weeks for Jarvis Landry. Well, last week wasn't horrifying, but I bet that the Jarvis Landry owner is a little bit concerned. D-Jax continues to have a back-to-back bad games. I'm trying to think if
D-Jax was another guy. If you had listened, if you're on Twitter, if you're on Twitter, you need to follow us. When the wind report came out that there's huge crosswinds. Look, DeSean Jackson is a downfield threat. He's a 20 yards in the air type of receiver, and you can't do that with 25-mile-an-hour crosswinds. You watch him kick a field goal, and it's like you kick it over one way so that it can end up in the middle. So we moved DeSean Jackson down quite a bit.
So that's just a good reminder. Follow the Twitter account at the FF Ballers. Jump on the Periscope. Join the Foot. I mean, we're putting out all kinds of alerts up here, keeping you up to date. So Sunday morning, I'm with you. I'm with Jason. I had Cousins as an okay play. I had Flacco as a low-end quarterback one. When I heard the news of what was going to happen, I buried both of them. I jumped off of Joe Flacco where I could. And so follow the show. The social media will help you out. And then the last one I want to talk about, just because the coach said he's going to have a big game coming for Golden Tate.
Whew.
So apparently a big game is 3 for 39.
He dropped a touchdown, so that doesn't help. But
drop him from my
3 for
my
39
fantasy roster.
Here's a reality. They did try to get him involved. They gave him 3 rushing attempts. You're trying to get him going because this team needs him. And I don't know what it is, but he just has not been able to get it done. I completely agree. He's a droppable asset right now. There's a lot of guys out there I would probably rather be holding on to as an upside guy even than Tate.
To me, it's time to move on from Golden Tate. But I've seen 5 weeks. That's enough for me to, even if he blows up and has a great rest of the season, still feel good in my choice that I'm going to move on from him and put somebody with higher upside like Sammie Coates on my bench.
Yeah, so last couple players here, we got some tight ends, Zach Ertz, Kyle Rudolph. Yeah, Zach Ertz, we bought in. I know we were high on him.
Yes.
Didn't get it going and really had the game script to do it. So there's no great excuse on Zach Ertz. He just didn't get it done. And Kyle Rudolph, who, I know we weren't high on, at least I wasn't. I had said there's a lot of guys on waiver I would rather play because of the matchup. Houston's very good against the tight end, and they played great tight ends this year so far. They have shut down every single tight end, even without J.J. Watt. So going forward, I think you need to look at the Houston Texans as a matchup where if you've got a good tight end, look for other. If you've got your whoever it is,
not a weekly
Barnage,
starter, not a Jordan Reed or a Gronk. You're talking that middle tier.
Gary Barnage and Eric Ebron if he's healthy, or Gates or whoever. If you're playing against Houston, Dwayne Allen, right? He's going to play Houston twice a year.
All right, so then the Monday night, just a reminder that Doug Martin and Charles Sims, they're going to be out. They're both considered doubtful. For some reason, though, we're getting the nonsense of we're not ruling them out until the game time, even though no one has practiced a single snap and they're doubtful. And I think the percentage of players listed as doubtful who have actually played is so minute. They're not going to play. So Jacquizz Rodgers, if you are in a very tight spot, him or Peyton Barber, I mean, good luck. Good luck to you out there, Foot Clan.
I think Jacquizz is.
You think he's okay for PPR?
I think he's okay. And by okay, I mean he's going to be in that like 20s to 30s running back. I don't see him finishing with 5 for 12. He'll get enough usage to be valuable, but he doesn't have the upside, especially in this matchup, to do anything special.
Sure.
You've got Derek Anderson. I don't think that causes alarm for any of the main guys.
Cam is out. Oh man, TJ Hernandez, good friend of the show, TJ Hernandez, who is just he always has fire on Twitter, and he puts out, Cam Newton is out. Huge upgrade for all the Carolina pass catchers. And I was like, oh man, just rough. Burning the ground. Love it.
I like Kelvin Benjamin. Greg Olsen is honestly, all jokes aside, I actually upgraded Greg Olsen when Cam went down because we saw that with Derek Anderson. He loves
the thing about Derek Anderson is he's a passer,
right?
Like Cam Newton, when Cam Newton throws for over 300, I'm like, wow, Cam Newton had a huge game. Cam Newton's great. He's good for fantasy. He's good for the real life NFL team, but that's because he runs the ball and he makes things happen.
And this is a game without Jonathan Stewart, so you got a passing quarterback that really can't rely on the normal stalwart of the running game. So the passing should be there for those players. I'm just throwing it out there once again.
Sure.
I'm sure. Look, he's done nothing this season. I'm not saying that you should.
No!
I'm not saying you should start him.
Don't do it.
But I think Devin Funchess shows up today.
Oh, all right. Well, we're going to close out the show here. Andy's going to download the show, see how long it's been. He's going to freak out.
Oh, I can't wait.
He's like, what are you guys doing? You're going so long. But you know what? I think the Foot Clan loves it.
Also, tomorrow we might have a special thing or two for Andy.
Yeah. Oh, of course.
Uh-huh.
But so tomorrow, the Tuesday show, is the big waiver show. We gotta help you make your decisions on how to improve your team. A shout out to Fantasy Jocks for sponsoring the studio. If you have any trophies or winner need, if you need to win any kind of thing, fantasyjocks.com, promo code footballers helps you out. Follow us on Twitter, jointhefoot.com. I mean, we're on Facebook. We're everywhere, Jason.
We're like Visa.
We'll see you tomorrow.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Fantasy Footballers Podcast. Join our fantasy football community on jointhefoot.com and follow us on Twitter @TheFFBallers.